Good morning. My name is Kim. I'm Vermont State Public Assistance Officer, and today we're going to talk a bit about FEMA's Public Assistance Grant Program. I have 10 minutes. There is a lot of information, but I'm going to do my best to give you a broad overview of what the Public Assistance Program is. FEMA Public Assistance Program is a reimbursement program. Therefore, we encourage applicants to do the work that they need to do to bring it back to pre-disaster or more resilient based on our state codes and standards. FEMA will come in and write up grant projects to reimburse applicants for that work that's eligible at 75% federal share. The remaining 25% portion is broken down based on a applicant's ERAF, Emergency Relief and Assistance Fund percentage. And the other portion is funded through the applicant. There are a lot of players that come in to assist us behind the scenes to get to a federal disaster. Once we have a large enough event, I work with VTrans and they start to gather road damages and compile them into Survey 123. We also work with the regional coordinators and planners in different areas of the state to collect any information related to that disaster storm. We are required to hit, every year there's another threshold that comes around, and for fiscal year 2025, we have to hit 1.2 million statewide in damages. And then within each county, they also have to hit an indicator based on their per capita. So a little bit about how the public assistance funding program begins is we have a large enough disaster and we sometimes activate the SEOC, the State Emergency Operations Center, and we will put out the local liaison reports and start to collect some of that damage information. My public assistance recovery team, I will reach out to VTrans and be working directly with them who are collecting Survey 123 data, which is the road information. They take photos of the damages, take measurements of the damages, and put that into all Survey 123. Based on those costs that we're seeing coming in, it'll make us have a decision whether we need to activate FEMA. We'll call FEMA in for what's called PDAs, preliminary damage assessments. They come into the state and work directly with us. They'll also perform a tabletop assessment in which they look over the VTrans data to determine if we do in fact have high enough disaster impacts to request a federal disaster. So once they're here, if they've validated what we have collected and say, yes, state of Vermont, you do indeed have over 1.2 million statewide in damages, then we will work through the governor's office to make a disaster declaration request. That goes up to Washington, D.C., and we wait typically 6 weeks for the president to either approve or deny that disaster declaration. Once approved, I will conduct applicant briefings in the affected areas, and those are highly crucial to attend because it provides a more in-depth discussion on what you're going to need to do during the public assistance funding program. There are a lot of different new variables in the program, and it is a lot of work. So we highly encourage that, applicants hire out help to assist them through this. After we have a federal disaster that's declared, there are different determining factors on whether you can apply for the federal funding program. The first factor is that you must be, this is public assistance, so it's not individual side of things. You must be like a town or a state agency or a critical private nonprofit. And you go into our FEMA grants portal to apply. And then the state will approve it, and then FEMA will approve that you're an applicant in the affected area that was declared. And the next tier is that you must have a damaged facility. And those damaged facilities have to meet different criteria for the amount and the threshold of damages per that site. I think the fiscal year 2025 is $4,000 in minimal damage for that site to be eligible. And the sites will be asked by FEMA to prove that you've maintained them, and they must be applicant owned. And there's also different variable factors that come into play when determining whether your damaged facility is eligible. And the next step is what type of work is being performed to make that damaged element whole again. Is the work itself eligible? Have you procured properly using your own procurement policy as well as the federal procurement policy? And the cost must also be reasonable. FEMA will look at all these determining factors in addition with the cost of determining whether your damages are eligible for public assistance funding at 75%. As you're an applicant in the program, FEMA will work and sit with you to discuss some of your damages. They'll come out and help assist with measurements and photographs. That, however, will delay the process if the applicant doesn't already have those in play. Some of the documentation they do require, and it's always good to collect early, is your procurement policy, also insurance policies. If something is damaged that could be insured, they will ask that you have submitted it to your insurance and have that approval or denial in place. Also, there's instances where we have used mutual aid or MOU agreements, and they'll ask for that kind of documentation. As far as reimbursement for the work that's done, they'll want to know how the work was done. Did you hire a contractor or did you use your own force account labor? And how many hours did they work? What was the cost of that? They'll also collect information on the materials that you used, the invoices to purchase the gravel or the culverts. They're going to collect all your contracts if you have put out for procurement. So these are just a small list of documentation that would support the rebuilding of your damaged facility to make it whole again. So anytime you have something that's damaged for federal reimbursement, you have to tell that story of how you have rebuilt it back to in kind or to the state codes and standards. I previously mentioned a little bit about you have to have at least $4,000 in minimal damage per site. That is the small project threshold. Anything less than that, they consider general maintenance. So if you have a gravel road that gets washed out, it must have at least $4,000 in cost to put it back to pre-disaster. They consider that anything from $4,000 up to just over $1 million is a small project. And so as they develop those, they get obligated, our team of financial folks will pay those out at 75% federal share when they're obligated. The large projects are those over $1 million. And those ones will require a full, complete closeout package in which we will work directly with you to go over the closeout process. That includes all documentation from the beginning of the event on that project until the end, all the cost documentation. FEMA will write those as estimated projects, but in the end, they will be rewritten for actuals. That's why it's important to have all that cost documentation in place. And our team will reimburse based on those actuals for the large projects. FEMA's public assistance program also offers opportunities to become more resilient. And some of those are called improved projects and alternate projects. For improved projects, that's, for example, a dirt road is damaged and the town really needs to widen that road. An applicant can propose an improved project to FEMA, but it has to be presented to FEMA and approved prior to beginning any of that construction. In addition to improved projects, FEMA also offers opportunities to do alternate projects. If a town has elected to no longer repair that road, they can take that funding for that damaged road and do something alternative in the town that you would also present to FEMA in a package, and it has to be approved prior to beginning that construction. Some alternative projects I've seen in the past are taking the funding from a dirt road that you've now reclassified as a 4 and using those alternative funds to do something such as rebuilding a trail or something in the community. As your projects go through review, there are different personnel on the federal side that will look at portions of your project. They'll look and determine whether insurance plays a role. They'll also look and see if you have your proper permits in place. That's super important because FEMA does reimburse you to bring your roads up to our state codes and standards. So making sure that you're reaching out to your A&R river engineer or your VTrans district tech to ensure that what you're putting back into the road meets our state codes. FEMA will also look at opportunities with the applicants to make something more resilient. If it's continuing to be a washout of a road from every little rain event, maybe consider, adding some wing walls or even stone line ditching to the gravel road. Just different opportunities to make your town more resilient to these future flood events. Other things they look at is to make sure that you're removing the trees or working in the streams at proper times of the year. So having all those environmental permits in place. And any time that you have a historical culvert, like a stone line culvert, or building, that you're following your state historical and preservation requirements. I know this is like a jam-packed brief overview of the public assistance program, and it's way more detailed than I could get in 10 minutes today. But there's a huge policy guide found online that will delve into eligibility and what could be eligible and how the FEMA program works. We also have information on the Vermont Emergency Management Public Assistance website and detailed information on the Vermont League of Cities and Towns website that goes into procurement, and it goes into how to apply for public assistance grant funding and what kind of information will be needed. When it's all said and done and you actually have a grant in place and it's made it through all the FEMA reviews, and now we have this obligated grant to reimburse you to get back to pre-disaster, our finance folks, Christine, Sarah, and Zoe, will be reaching out with a sub-grant agreement. It's super crucial that you read those emails that come from these ladies because they will need to be signed and returned in order to receive your federal funding. On the public assistance side of things, in addition to myself, there's also Ron Pentkowski, who's our state public assistance administrator, who does all the special projects for the state, for VTrans and BGS. In addition to our small team, we have hired out consultants from, Guidehouse, what we're currently working with for the recent larger disasters. And then we also have a small but mighty group of temporary public assistance coordinators who are in different portions of the state.